Measure through the sit or stand. Going forward with the bike, that was much better. We're good on keeping our knees, ankles parallel. The bike can move. Woo! So I want to see that hip shift further out, which would flatten the tire. Here. Letting our hips be the side-to-side balance, shifting to counterbalance, so then our shoulders can stay centered and be our front-to-back balance. If you pull the shoulders side to side, you will end up falling back for the next obstacle. You'll also end up on the wrong foot, causing the bike to slide and push. Straighten that outer leg, drive the shoulders forward. Woo. Ultimately, we're trying to be weightless in the hands, holding all our weight in our feet, our pressure to our foot pegs. You'll see that outer heel comes up, the back end slides, the outer heel drops, and then the feet come parallel to the hillside. Alright, so I'll let you get into it, but yeah, initially you were starting, in my opinion, too far back, and then you were double clutching. You're starting now neutral, going to move forward as the bike, as you're accelerating. Now that one was the bars. That one you did the initial, but then you swung back. Okay. Like initially you did do that. I was gonna say to the very first one, just really building your, I think the most advanced riders have the best transition from sitting to standing and then back standing to sitting. Like advanced riders are good at standing. And anyway, yeah, you kind of, you're going through the heel, but then you come up and then hinge. And I want to see you just shoulders, armpits over hands. Okay. And if I give him credit, there's a Tyler MX Factory. He calls it the pop-up, like a surfer. How surfers will practice on the beach all day, their pop-up. You got to be able to, in an instant, while releasing your power.
Yeah, I guess the harder you pop up, the more you're pushing down and the more traction you're going to get from that pop-up, right?
Correct. And I was thinking about this earlier, the idea for when we were talking about the balance of throttle, wheel spin, traction, of me saying when you have more traction, you can have more throttle.
Yeah. One builds the other and they kind of support each other.
Correct. And then you also, the piece of this where I say clutch release is that's when you get the true drive. I think a lot of people don't release their clutch enough. So they're right on that cusp of like, not quite drive, but wheel spin.
Yeah. I feel like that's probably me.
I get that with most really good, but not the best hard enduro guys will do climbs and they just start to pull the clutch in. And I make the joke, if you've ever been stuck on a hill with a running dirt bike, you pulled the clutch in. Yeah. And if you've ever been stuck on a hill with a stalled dirt bike, well, then you could have gave it more gas or downshifted. But typically that reaction of clutch in, and normally it stems from the shoulders fell back but I make that joke like the clutch will always take your drive away. You're tall, so you're always going to have that little bent knee. But I think even if you exaggerate those pivots, the outer leg straightening, you would feel the tire flatten the bike, get more traction, a lug, a power.
Something like that? Something
like that. And then, so I liked that one. Then what it leads to is you are moving forward with the bike enough that you could regrip your hands. And that's only now that you're far enough forward in that. And why I say regrip the hands is when your wrist is just behind the bar, maybe you're hanging on. Maybe there's less throttle control, but you also, that's where the head shake.
Yeah.
And I make the oh shit moment. There's a lot of moments in dirt bikes that we don't plan for, unfortunately. And like if you hit something and your wrist is behind the bar, that is the whiskey throttle. And if your wrist is up, because I was up over it and I was planning to be going good, then my oh shit moment lets off the gas. And they're just subtle little, like I see your upper body forward enough now that the wrist almost binds.
Right.
There's this.
I think I struggle with that sometimes. Like I'm in the moment, I can't regrip, but I want more throttle.
But you want more throttle.
Yeah.
I wish I had most of the time I have a real explanation. This one I don't for. I know that I use the throttle as if it's a doorknob or a screwdriver, but where I'm going with this is Mr. B-Rad has a slow-mo video with camera under, and we're drag racing down pavement, and I'm going, what? And then there's a slow-mo clip of me on a rock garden and enduro cross, and I accelerate in, my wrist comes down mid rock garden. It's almost like I push this part in and roll my wrist back out.
You're like re-gripping.
And then you ultimately trust this throttle snapback. But I think a lot of people get that one chicken wing head shake when they try to gas hard, and the pros are rolling the throttle, maintaining that elbow up, strong triangle, pressure over the front axle, even while they're accelerating. You know, even when I trained with Cody Webb Racing Endurocross, he'd be like, Ryan, you get stuck on the 5th log because you clutch on the 5th log.
Yeah.
He's like, you need to, every time your front tire hits a log, gas until you're over it. And if it's an oh shit gas, you clutch to drop it.
Okay.
And most amateurs clutch before a log, and then they're stuck on it, or a ledge.
Yeah.
And like, they're so big on, I gas from front tire to back tire, and if it's too large of a gas, then I'll clutch, but I'm up the obstacle.
Right.
That one looked pretty effortless there. I'd even sit further forward. So like you were seated here, I said to the camera, sit further forward, and that's exactly what I pictured, is because since you already seated back, your standing was back. And the whole bike was pushed inside. That was a little tricky. It's gonna feel funny, but go hips in front of foot pegs. That way when you go to stand, your weight goes into your pegs and not your hands. If your hips are behind your pegs at all, it's like a pull-up. And that's even when you're stuck on a hill.
Yeah,
Watch Graham, even when Graham Jarvis is stuck on a hill, his hips are, when he's moving and rolling, he scoots back, but when he's stuck, anyway.
That's a big difference. Like I stand here, I almost don't need the bars.
Yeah.
I stand here, I have to.
Yeah, and then the weight, you feel the whole weight's different. The whole bike compresses differently. So anyway, yep, start there. All right, I got one for you. It's a good one. It's a good one for you. So you are trying to counterbalance with your shoulders, and your hips are staying so center.
Yeah.
And whether you're doing a turn track,
but I need to do the opposite.
Correct. I want your helmet to lead your bike up the hill. I'll do it again, but I'm pretty confident my shoulder probably even like drops into the turn, which lets my bike drop. Some people hear shoulder drop and they think my helmet goes to my hand, and like the shoulder drop just lets my whole bike lean. But if my helmet stays center, now my hip will. But anyway, I see your helmet pull to counterbalance on the hill, and then you're just drifting right.
Yeah.
And if I added a second, this is all part of helmet leads. You also look at the rain rut like I did the first time versus looking at where you want the dang thing to go. And so I'll either give you another go, or I could do it again if you want to see it again.
One more time. So I'll focus on.
As you stand, your hips will shift out for the turn versus your helmet shifting over.
I want my hips kind of to the right a little bit.
Yeah. Leading the helmet, holding pressure to the feet. Glutes, hamstrings, hips. I wish I was that tall and strong.
Bash your foot peg.
Oh yeah, it's plenty bashed. Further forward. Start further forward. Alright, and so even that one, you probably realize sitting and standing at the top, your helmet was over your hand.
Okay.
And you'll see it when you rewatch it. I'm going to really think in my brain that my helmet's going to be really near these rocks in a sense. Way better. Almost makes it look too easy. Shouldn't be all that pulling and twisting. Scoot up.
That felt a little better.
That was way better. And you're not, and I said to the camera the last one, I was like, you make it look, when you do it right, it's easy.
It looks easy. Like when I watch you ride, you're you're not doing anything,
but
the bike's just freaking...
The bike does it all. But I genuinely believe hard enduro and all riding is much more a front to back balance than a side to side. Like when the front to back is feeling correct, the side to side seems to happen. But there's a lot of timing in that. I'm going forward because I'm gassing, how far forward. But where I'm going with this is when people start using their shoulders to side balance, within a bike length, you will fall back.
So you're never supposed to use your shoulders to balance. You're always supposed to use your hips.
Yeah, I say like if you're climbing a steep, mile-long hill and you catch a rock or a tree root and it steps the bike this way, if I pull my shoulders up, I'm off the trail. Amateurs pull pendulum. You pull your shoulders over, you give it gas, you fall back, I think
that's what I do.
And the pros that climb these mile-long hills and they catch the same rut and the same rock, when their bike kicks, their helmet stays center and their hips shift, and it comes right back to helmet center. My helmet leads me. And so same thing here. Like your side to side almost in a bike length lines itself out when you use your hips.
Right.
You will almost always end up off the trail in a bike length when I do. And it does temporarily in that moment counterbalance you. But I even tell people like a flowing single track like this, see where you're from, you hit a tree is the difference. Here you just go through a bush and it's not the end of the world. But people will start flowing through these zigzags and then before they know it, they're 3 feet off the trail. And I'm like, yeah, you did counterbalance the turn, but then you didn't go anywhere.
Because they counterbalance with their shoulders?
Instead of their hips.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story.
That's probably what I do because I noticed that especially like North Dakota, there's a lot of like deep single track.
Yeah, those
deep
grooves.
One tire wide. And you never know when there's like a hidden boulder on the
and a tree root in it and
so like I focus really hard on trying to stay in the rut, but just like you said, like sometimes I'm like
if it's pulling you left and your reaction is shoulders up. Also, if you could in a funny way, like if my bike starts to fall left, picture it's falling, when I pull my shoulders, I push it further left. And that's when you like versus my bike falls left, and I didn't change anything.
Kind of pulling it to stand it back up.
Then I pull it back into that rut. Oh, I'm too far right now. And so you'll see the pros have this like hip, but their helmet is so center. So it's sand, it's not hard enduro, but the front needs to be light and he needs to be in control. So his bike's moving, it's dancing in ruts, and he's throwing a shaka up there. And his helmet's so centered, his upper body's so in control, but the bike is fully dancing. Heels down,
Yeah, you can see it's dancing.
And like hinging at the hips, but there's nothing going on in the upper body. A lot of even really talented riders claim when they squeeze their knees. If you pinch your knees together, it locks your hip flexors and it attaches you to the movement of the bike. So if you catch a rut and pinch your knees, you just cinch yourself with it.
Yeah.
Versus if you catch a rut and drop the other heel, there's no... I tell people I'm always actively pushing down. I'm not ever thinking of a squeeze.
Right.
I reset my feet like I reset my hands. I get a kick and my feet go wonky. I reset my feet, I reset my hands, and I take a breath every time I use my brakes.
I don't know if I can get my front tire down in time to use my bounce to get over the second one.
Yeah, and even learning how slow you could hit the first one, like that light crawl over the first one, and then a bigger blip on the second one, you know, like...
Way easier.
It's much...
Just like a little bit of lift.
A little bit of lift.
And then let your suspension come
And I think that's also what it leads to. So like transition into the scary move, but if you ended up being a racer, the scary move will like... There's no double blipping going on. I talked to this about a dude the other day. I said, let's watch Erzberg and see if a pro does a single double blip the whole race. I'm scared to do it because it's a pipe smasher if you mess it up. But the other day I was like, the only time I would like double blip in something like this is if I was like trying to drop it on the next log. Right as I gas, I'm gonna push weight. I'm gonna make sure I'm going forward.
I don't know what I'm doing.
You know, you did pop forward with it. I just think you needed the maintain of the throttle. You went up and then let off.
Yeah.
You did do the pop and you got on top, but then the second that rear tire hit, you did not continue. Now, see if you can take the other aspect of this drill. Can you go sitting to standing, release, and then... Yeah! That was the best pop yet. Then it was just that you could have either clutched to lower it
or stayed on the gas.
Or stayed on the gas for the hill climb. But that was your best pop yet. It should feel explosive. It's a big maneuver at once. It really is.
I think I'm like, I don't know, I get into this like stuck. Like I'm stuck and I don't know like what to do first or...
Yeah, it's that step-by-step process. If I don't want to make you overthink, but even there, you were trying to static balance with your shoulders and your knees went in. And the second your knees went in, the shoulder came back and you're like, whoa, I'm falling over. Yeah! That was the best. That was awesome. Yeah! Now you gotta go forward. After you're up, you still gotta do the same hop. You gotta go hop and then forward. I'm getting up the log and then over. Like, you got the hop part dialed in, man. That's, in my opinion, that's the hardest part. 20% more. Up. That was a pull all day. Straight down. Straight down, compress the shock. That was a pull on the bar. So gentle. Yeah! Oh, I just needed a 3% more.
More power?
Yeah, more power, and I think if you straighten that leg out, it'll turn your tire into the log versus being on like the swing arm. Like when you lean the bike, it hits swing arm, and when you flatten the tire, right? Like I'll try to do it slow and controlled. Watch how my tire will flatten. You see that? How it grabs? I'm not just sliding around. And maybe you also see in that moment how I'm really no weight on the pipe. It's on my bike. And so, and I was gonna add the new goal is to prove your weight is on the bike. Can you land both back on the pegs? Like I pivot a corner and gas to a straight.
So I want to keep the bike more vertical instead of leaning it.
Correct.
Okay.
And right now you're kind of leaning on what I call your balance leg, and I want you to feel that you're standing on the bike.
I gotcha.
Yes. Ah, clutch! We gotta release that sucker. So that was being on your balance foot.
What's up?
So that was being weight on the pipe. So like your pivot, your rotation, your axis was your leg. And luckily we stayed safe. But where I'm going is that will always lead to, and you see that in the hard enduros, where if your weight stays on the bike, the peg through and over, that's also the statement of lead your helmet around. Your helmet stayed right where it stayed. Think about your body did this swoop, but your helmet stayed. And so anyway, that part of...
What do I need to do to fix that?
It might be the idea of you could still think push harder with your outer foot or straighten your leg more, or maybe you start to think about what helped us on the hill is lead my shoulders or my helmet through the... Yeah. Like your helmet should end up a foot from the pipe.
I think I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah. Weight stays on that left foot. And you gotta stay on the gas longer. Half a second. Yeah, you're starting to feel the tire grab. I think you're starting to actually feel this weight traction chest game I talked.
The difference of staying kind of in front of the bike versus doing this and then the bike goes out.
Yeah. And not only should you hold more traction and not have a bike sliding out, you should also begin to feel this is way more efficient. You're not yanking and pulling.
Right.
And I'll follow you. Like there, I want to see the knees come back, the heels drop. Right toes sticking out. I want to go back to the peg when I'm done with the brake. Now that it's going out. That left heel will drop when you brake. Your right heel is going to come up because you're using your brake. The left heel can drop to add traction. So this is where I separate braking as I lean on my inner bar. That's what'll drop my shoulder, as Stu Baylor would say. And I stand on my outer foot as I accelerate. Ah! That clutch in the middle of the turn is what caused you to push. I heard the acceleration, which would have uprighted, but the clutch was in is why you revved. Parallel, and I want the outer leg straighten with the flat tire. You can see as that knee bends too much, the shoulders start to pull. Woo-hoo-hoo! Here, real quick. I was gonna stop you once we get to a 2-track up here. This is what I called the flats earlier. My moto people love, but you'll be like, all right, I'm done with it. But we're almost to our sandy hills. Anyway, you on the trail, definitely lean your bike with your feet. And then at some point, the outer knee is bending so much that shoulders start to kind of pendulum back and the bike pushes. And then there was my example of your foot hit the ground and your weight went to the foot and the bike unsprung and slid versus like, oh shit, I'm dabbing a foot skateboard. But it stemmed from you were too far back, your knee bent. Because the knee, you are over, you are. I don't want you to feel like you need to be further forward all the time. But it's that, as you lean your bike for the turn, you're letting your upper body come back. And just
I need to keep my body forward.
Your body forward and centered. And you do absolutely shift your hips, but you shift your hips and bend your knee. You don't shift your hips and flatten your bike, straighten your leg.
Okay.
Like at high speed. You're here. And I want you I can't accelerate and that's what then leads to the front push, sit down, bike slide. You'll see it, like your hips do move, but your outer knee bends, gives shoulder versus outer leg straight and lunge upper body. And that's your hands. Your hands going, yeah, I mean, I'm assuming your hands getting tired because you shake them out. That's every time your knees are too far forward, the shoulder, and it's only in a moment, but it's in a moment 35 times over.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And so
I see the difference when I watch you do it in 2 different ways.
Yeah, and that's back to me saying it's very hard to separate them at a slow speed, but there's only one way to do it fast.
So keep the outer leg straight.
I want to see that outer leg, that outer knee straight, and that outer heel drop, whatever that verb is. Cody Webb says toe up. In like a rocky, sandy race, I'll actually get blisters in the top of my toes from curling them up into my boots. But since I'm on the ball of my foot, it just rocks my heel lower. But yeah, like I behind you when your knee bends and the bike pushes, I'm in your dust just standing there knowing my bike will grab whatever is there. So anyway, you'll see it. I like your hips movement, but it needs to be hip move, outer leg straighten.
Yeah.
You need to have about 20% more throttle than we're in this hard pack. You actually have to ride further forward to anticipate that throttle. That outer heel is up and the inner is down. You're leaning the bike with your heels and it causes it to push and slide. You want to lean on the inner handlebar and then stand on the outer foot. This is pretty sandy terrain and you're doing real good. I like to point out the riding doesn't change. People struggle with sand because they try to change how they ride. Oh, we got one. I have tweezers if you want. I saw you brush it about, what, a quarter mile back? I know that you're exaggerating your knee back in your mind. I still want to go even more.
Okay.
And I know there's a real good sweeping corner that you'll rewatch that your inner heel was like, seriously, had to have been 4 inches lower than. Another thing I said.
Like the wrong direction, basically.
The wrong direction.
Yeah.
And that's when the bike is shimmying versus planted and then confidence inspiring. And it should relieve the hands.
It definitely feels like I am trying to focus on that. It feels like, I don't know, like my knee's about to hyperextend or something. Is that, or maybe I'm just like tight back here in the back of the leg.
It might be tight back. I tell you, I'd rather you feel like you're being stretched back there.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, and so you know, when you rewatch the footage, you're not close to the. Now, like when you watch Cody Webb ride or Mario Roman, they look like they're almost hyperextending. You definitely still have a bend.
Okay.
Just to take that human fear away.
Yeah.
You definitely still have a bend. I know it's got to feel straighter than normal, and it probably is feeling stretched.
Yeah.
I tell people I'd rather you feel stretched than flex, though. That means you're dropping weight.
Yeah.
Muscle tension in your body does not mean the bike is getting weight. It just means you're binding everything up.
Yeah. So.
And this is also, I think you might feel the separation of, we're going fast enough, there's the separation of I lean on my inner bar as I decelerate, and I stand on my outer peg as I accelerate.
Right.
Versus the slow drills doing together.
Yeah.
This is definitely, and I just said to the camera, it's pretty sandy back there and you're ripping right through it. Most people's issue with sand is they think they need to change what they're doing and then the sand kicks their butt. But when you really don't change much and you ride it,
like I feel like the balance point is just smaller in sand.
It is. I say you have to be much more precise. It brings every flaw out.
Yeah.
I'll take some of my kids that are shred in the turn track and bring them to a sand track, and like there's every flaw pulled back out.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Cool. Good feedback. Keep it coming.
You did it again! You did it again! Hey, I'll get it. You okay? Damn, front went over.
Whoops.
You're good.
I hate the sand.
Pardon me. So your front went over the rut. I know you were using your front brake, but part of me thinks you actually needed more in that moment to get it in.
I feel like I just can never nail a rut. Like I can never put my tire where it's supposed to be.
You have to really drag your brake and your throttle together. Like I'm dragging my brake in, but even as I start my acceleration, you want tweezers? I continue to drag my brake. Like you gave it gas, front comes up. Maintain gas, a little front brake.
Okay.
Opportunity to accelerate and transition to standing. Brakes, brakes, brakes! I was letting you pass me back.
Okay.
Like that back end kicking is when the knees bend. You fight that balance of shoulders forward to be free in the hands, but rear wheel traction. We need to get those knees back, heels down, and this loose rock of toes up. Planting that back tire down, keeping the front end light, maintaining my upper body forward, changing the pitch of the bike. See how the body pulls? So even there, when you went to gas up that ledge, the body went back instead of going with the bike. To give the proper amount of clutch throttle, you gotta lunge that body with the bike. Go up the obstacle with it. So this is like the true test of reacting. Not really knowing where to go, the trail's hard to follow, the bike kicking around. True reaction, if my bike kicks down right, I drop left heel. My bike kicks left, I drop the right heel. Finding that balance while moving forward. There, as the knees go forward, it actually lets that rear wheel spin. I like that the helmet's forward, but I want to see the hips. So I like your helmet's forward, but as you crouch your hips forward, you're burning out.
Keep the butt back.
Yeah, like that. Could you picture that as your shoulders start to pull and your hips come towards the gas tank, that back wheel starts spinning. You'll see it. The first half of this climb, you were leg straight, heel down, lug power. The second your knees came forward, and it did get a little steeper and looser, but
it did feel like it was slipping more recently.
Yeah, as your
and I was like, why? I didn't understand why.
You'll see it's polar opposites difference in your technique between the two parts of that hill.
Okay.
It was almost when that one blip unsettled your chest back, which you made it up the blip and recovered, but then you stayed upright, and then your knees start moving instead of...
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. Even there, sit further forward. Your hips are in front of your feet, and your feet are on the pegs. Your weight will go straight to the tire when you give it gas. Your hips are behind the pegs. You sit down, it's rocking back into your hand. Whoa, I got a weird kick there. When your balance front to back is just right, that bike can dance all around. The second the front to back balance is off and that bike dances. Woo, we're along for a ride. Started burning my trailing up that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Bend, the hip shift, the upper body twist, and that bike going for a ride.
gave it enough gas.
Gave it the pepper. Yeah, then you did what I did. You didn't go with it.
Yeah.